Rico, it's great to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Great to see you, Adam. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
no, you're welcome, and it's great to have you on. And yeah, I just kind of thought I'd start by introducing you and kind of talking about what you do now, and kind of how you kind of got into it, and like your story. Because you're ex fighter jet pilot. You're now an author and public speaker as well, and you're being featured on over 100 radio stations and podcasts. And yeah, I will kind of like start.
Well, yeah, actually, probably the same as or similar to yourself, Adam. Things go
Mm,
back way back, and and I think the way I got into, wanting to help other people was just, and maybe you had the same experience. You're just trying to figure it out for yourself. High school, I was what, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, I was what I call the a back of the room kind of guy, which was I mean, I wasn't cutting up in the back of the room, but I just didn't want to sit up front. And so as you go and you'd watch your high school classmates and stuff, I wasn't jealous about it. It was just like, man, they're like breezing through school, and what's the matter with me? What's my problem? Why can't I seem to figure some of this stuff out? And so I was just always curious about how life works, basically. I can say that now as an adult, but as a kid, how frustrating it is. It's like, geez, why couldn't I figure that out? And I had this passion of wanting to be an artist and to fly airplanes. So I applied to university to do two different universities to do both. I got turned down initially for the military. Uh, they ran out of slots, and they said, nope, you're not in this year's cut. So I was on my way actually to art school. And that summer they called me and said, hey, we had somebody drop out, say they don't want to go fly. And would you like the slot? I guess I was next on the list. So man, I jumped on it right away. I figured I could always go back and learn how to starve as an artist in my own right. So that's how I kind of slid into flying. And then fast forward, after I made it through flying, because I grew up with a lot of self-doubt, a lot of frustration, especially trying to figure things out, and like a lot of kids. And somehow I just stuck with it. And I learned through aviation that aviation is really based on, I can say this now, I didn't then, but at first, it's just based on just two choices. It's, as they say, takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory. I mean, either take off or you don't. You either fly the jet on speed or you don't. You're either precise or you're not. I mean, but you're forced in aviation, as in a lot of other careers, you're forced to focus on a lot of different things to find out whether or not they're in parameters or out of parameters. Just two choices, whether it's electrics, hydraulics, altitude, weather, um, you know, oil systems. You're always cross-checking, and it's kind of like a just two choices pattern. And I was talking to a teacher one day who I'd run into, and I was still in the military at the time, still flying for the Air Force, and she said, "Well, why don't you come and talk to my fourth and fifth graders about just two choices?" And I said, that seems like a little bit over their head. I don't think they're going to be interested in something like that, man. Her eyes got real big, and she said, "Oh no, they're going to get it." And so the next day I showed up at her class and started to talk to her kids about, asked them what their dreams and their goals were, and how they thought they would get there. And I started to use the phrase just two choices, and I noticed something. I noticed that with kids, you can't you know you can't write sentences at that age. You have to put a picture up. And so I just happen to I have it here because I have a couple of these little pictures. I put a diagram like this up when I explained to them just two choices. And I said, this is it. Let's see if I can get that right. I'll put it in front of my face.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. And so the choice one direction is what you want, and the choice two directions what you don't want. So if you want to learn your sport or music, or you want to get better grades, you got to keep making these,
Mm,
choice one directions. Because you make a choice two, you see it's not taking you upward, it's taking you down.
mm,
It's like the kids got it. And I was like, that's it. They
Mm.
understood. And so then I started doing more goal setting kind of programs with, with the younger kids, teaching just two choices and some other goal setting kind of things, because very surprisingly, it was well received as an idea. Now the adults, I'll be, the adults, and you say just two choices, they say, so what? But when you show it to the kids and you show it what it means to why they're learning what they're learning in school, whole different, whole different world. So it just kind of expanded. That's how I kind of got expanded into speaking in between flying, both in the military and then later when I transitioned to fly for the commercial airlines in the US. On my days off, I'd be asked to come speak to schools too, on that same topic. And so one thing just kind of led to another. But it answered my question back in high school, which is why are some of these kids, perhaps excelling more than I'm than myself. And I said, it's got to be because of choice, because there are a lot of bright kids who aren't doing anything. And there are a lot of kids who've been written off who just changed the world. So it has to be based on how they're choosing to focus their energy, and so like I said, for the ones who, God bless them, for the ones who are really smart but don't know how to focus their energy into a positive direction or don't have a reason to, the formula works the same way. It takes them in a downward direction. And yet for those, I'll say like myself, who are working that extra hard stuff, you say, I'm going to keep making that upward choice. Um, that's what leads to success, I think. And it's like a computer. It's just binary. It's either a zero or a one. You either go one direction or you're going the other. You're not doing both at the same time. You're only doing one or the other. And
Mm.
computers are just quick 0 1 0 1 1 0 1 1 0. This whole conversation's digital. It's all zeros and ones. It's all it is. And there are just two choices there for the computer too. And so
Mm.
I got to thinking that this might be something that could get some traction.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I think, like, what an amazing, career you've had, in flying those jets as well, and those experiences and skills that you've learned along the way. And like you said, you kind of wanted to go into into art, and then just by very very like lucky to be offered a place because someone dropped out, isn't it? And I agree with you, and I think it's those kind of two choices you said that we have, those kind of two paths. And like I think you said adults, kind of I think it can make sense to adults, but I think like you said, like, to kids, they can
Yeah,
just see it for what it is and then make sense of it there and then.
exactly. It's. I think that's been the toughest challenge for me to overcome. Now that I thought, well, I'm going to move away from schools. I'm going to move into talking to businesses, and and a lot of times it's like, okay, what do we do with this? What do you mean? And I get excited about it because, of course, I love the subject. But
Mm.
all right, just two choices. How's your quality control? Right?
Mm.
I mean, you can't have extraordinary quality control. You have two choices. Either you choose extraordinary or you choose something less. That's all that
Mm.
it is. You can
Mm.
create this giant program that you send throughout the company that says we are, number one in quality control in whatever business we're in. But
Mm.
it all boils down to, you know, um, do people know what that extraordinary choice is in the business so that they can consistently make it, so that you can consistently be at that level in a business. And if you have a real quick story, I was talking to a business about probably 6 months ago, and they had a quality control thing come up. A guy got overwhelmed, technician got overwhelmed, and rather than say, "Hey, listen, let's call this company up and tell them it's going to be late," this is my side of how I would interpret it. You know, let's do that. We're sorry if we just not getting fixed on time. He retagged it as having been serviced and sent it back to the company. Just two choices, right? He didn't realize that the impact of that just two choices moment would cost them $450,000 contract. They lost $450,000. They just fired him right there. They said, we're not going to work with you guys anymore. But it's a just two choices moment. You know, it's
Mm.
just two, and as an employee, if he were to see, you know, all of these little choices, especially when it comes to quality and something that's serviceable that you're using, um, every choice counts. Every choice
Mm.
counts in life anyway. But if he somehow had a bigger picture, maybe he had a bigger, a picture of. It's like I got to get a couple of these up. Here we go. If he had a picture of a just two choices diagram
Mm.
that looked like this, you know,
Mm.
I'm going to stay in overwhelm down here at the bottom, or
Yeah.
the word wouldn't be easy, but it, you know, I'm going to take a positive choice and I'm going to talk to my boss and say, listen, I need another 3 days on this before I
Mm.
send it back. But he took the overwhelm direction. Um,
Mm.
and I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying it's, you know, there's a whole lot more going on that I'm not familiar with, but
Mm.
it's still just two choices. It's just two choices is inescapable for every person on the planet. Everything. It's how you manage. It's how each of us manage. You know, these the. No, I'll use this one. It's how each of us manage this. You know, manage this choice point
Mm.
situation right here, where you see where the blue and the red are meet. That's the choice point. That's where everybody in every second has to decide: am I going to do something that's new and better, like we were talking before the show, you know, in our lives when we have difficult situations, or are we going to continue at that choice point to make the same old choices? And we shouldn't be surprised when we make the same old choices, we end up in the same old place. And the only way to get to a new place is to make a new and better choice. And that sucks sometimes. I mean, that is beyond, as you know, and as we talked about before the show. I mean, those kind of choices in many situations are painful. And it's like, I'll never get through this. But what's my other choice? You know, like there's a quote from an old Star Wars movie. Yoda, Luke asks Yoda one time, he goes, is the dark side stronger? And Yoda says, no, it's quicker, it's easier, it's more seductive. So it's quicker, it's easier to make that, you know, to make that same old choice in that direction from that choice point. It's quicker and easier and than it is to make the new choice. But once that becomes the new habit, it's quicker and easier to make your positive habits. It does take effort. So
Mm. It's really powerful, isn't it? You know, like that diagram and what you're talking about, and how, you know, like you said, that guy in that business, like, you know, that was a lesson for him in that business, making that choice. But, you know, like you said, sometimes people don't make that, you know, the other choice because it might be more difficult, or, you know, it might present certain emotions to them in making that choice probably. And but, you know, if you're going to, like, as you mentioned, if you're going to make that old choice, you're going to get, you know, those kind of same results, aren't you? And that, I think, you know, it makes me think about, you know, relationships, you know, with people, and um you know, relationships. And if you're going to keep, you know, on that same, how can I put it into words, if you're going to make those same choices and you're going to end up with the same kind of people, I think that's something I've learned and realized. And, you know, like I worked for a few businesses and restaurants, and they had a very high staff turnover, and they were just getting people in, not really interviewing them, getting to know them. And then over like a couple of weeks, you were seeing the cracks because they weren't changing their process of recruitment and getting to know someone and hiring, you know, from a different place, if that makes sense. And it's like you said, those kind of like two, it is ultimately, like you said, just those two choices. And you can apply that to so many things.
yeah, just seeing you say hiring from a different place. I worked for over 20 years with a company called Southwest Airlines in the U.S. And they're just, fortunately, nobody else was hiring when I wanted to go to the airlines, and I went there, and not that the other airlines aren't good, it's just that the Southwest Airlines does exactly that. They won't hire somebody for a position unless they're a fit. I mean, unless they just don't hire people. Um, they hire like what I call they hire the vibe. You know, they hire somebody like the CEO would say, we can't teach you how to be a kinder, gentler person, and to, you know, we're not we can't teach you that. We just hire people who are kinder, gentler people, and it fixes 80 to 90% of your problems. I mean, the turnover at Southwest Airlines is like virtually minimal. I mean, before
Mm.
the world situation happened here, it was 60,000 employees, and everybody stayed as long as they could stay, basically, because it was exactly what you talked about. The company knew the hiring process, and what was a match for the company and what wasn't a match, and it's almost like they were um, like they had crystal balls they could look into, go, yeah, this guy's not going to work out. It's like they but that became that instilled in it. And so you're exactly
Mm.
right. It comes down to actually, can I share one more thought, Adam?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm open. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. The thought is, again, as you were talking about the diagram, it that's kind of what it goes down to with regard to the um, when you talk about customer service. Let's just
Mm.
say the new side of the diagram is extraordinary customer service. A company's frustrated because they don't have extraordinary customer service, and the old side is same old service. People come in,
Mm.
and maybe I'm hoping you'll think of some restaurants and places that you've worked at, as well. Well,
Mm.
you can't, if you don't establish a new and better choice in the upward direction, and make sure that the employees consistently make that choice, you can't expect to have extraordinary customer service. It
Mm.
just doesn't. You can't substitute old service for extraordinary, because it's not extraordinary. I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's like landing on the moon. They either landed on the moon or they didn't, right?
Mm.
That's why our NASA Space Administration, they have everything is either go or no go, right?
Mm.
Yeah, there's no in between. It's like, no, we're not going. Stop on the countdown, or your go to continue descent to the moon, your go to continue to whatever the maneuvers were as they proceeded to land on the moon, your go to touchdown, your go to stay for 2 minutes in case something went wrong. um, they would have to come back up off the moon. But the whole thing was just two choices: binary thinking, 0 or 1. We're either go or we stay. We're either going to stay in the moon, or we're going to hit the button and we're going back up because something's not right. But that's what life is, you know? And so, anyway, going back to the restaurant business,
Mm.
switching
Mm.
away from space, where there's some
Yeah.
thoughts there that had to do with customer service that you're thinking about, that would be the way maybe training programs weren't handled at some
Mm.
restaurants or hotels, or
Yeah. I mean, thinking back to restaurants and hotels, I mean, when I worked in a few kind of restaurants, and then when in the future when I went to work at other hotels and restaurants, I would see the contrast in how they do customer service and the standards that they set.
yeah,
Because when I was like 18, 19, I was working, just normal restaurants, and then a couple of years ago, I worked in quite a high kind of level, high pressured hotel
well,
where
yeah,
they have very high standards. People are paying a lot of money to stay there, and the approach was completely nothing that I've ever experienced before in customer service and standards. It was all perfection, perfection, and the owner is a very respectable person, done very well as well. So it's his standards, and it kind of flows into the hotel. So But from learning all those skills, I couldn't, like, from that diagram, it made me realize that I couldn't go back to the other standards of the other place I worked back when I was 17 or 18. It's that kind of shift and those kind of, like I said, those two choices. Do you provide very good customer service because you're going to get XYZ results, or if you go to this way, then you're only going to get these results, kind of thing. And I think, like, with like results and I mean choices, do you think like people struggle to make choices now because there are so many different choices to make, and it's not really explained to people? I don't think it wasn't for me when I was at school like that. It should be.
I'm glad you're recording this, right?
Yeah.
You got the recording button, because I didn't hit record. I thought I had my small recorder on.
It's okay. I can send you a copy of this. It's all recording. It's fine.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Going back to that thought, again, to show the diagram, what happens is that people, and I include myself when I talk about these things, because I've got my stuff, man. So I'm not here teaching something that I don't have to hit myself in the head every
Yeah.
don't do that, or do something better. But on the diagram, as you're talking about it, the point I want to make is that I think, and you're talking about switching back and forth between old and new. Like, so when you were younger, and let's just say you had a different outlook on customer service, it was kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure if I like this person, and so I'm going to treat them average. Oh, this person seems like they're a much more fun kind of group of people, so now I'm going to treat them up into the new direction, into the exciting direction. And then you run into somebody else, and then you go back to the old way of doing things. So I think younger on, when we don't realize that it's the consistency that builds the habit pattern, it's the consistency of the choice that builds the habit pattern. I think actually that's where the next level of consciousness is going. Right now people talk about, and understandably so, since the 1930s, you have these books like Think and Grow Rich, and Norman Vincent Peale, and Power of Positive Thinking, and those books that were really to found Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They came out in those were in the 30s when those guys thought of that stuff and put it out there, and it was like wacko to the psychology world. They're like, oh, you got to be nuts. You just got to think positive and not go see a professional. They thought that it was just crazy, but we're still in that consciousness of take positive action, which is good. But I think the next step is realizing that positive action, or any kind of an action, is the result of a choice. You see, so now, to understand choice back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, I don't think anybody would have got it. But now, like you talked about, there are so many choices, and choice is now a word that's a much more used, word that's used a lot more than it was back then. Now that ties right into what I think is the next level. I mean, just hold up your phone and you say, I'm in aviation, so I'll just take it this way. I want to be an astronaut. All I gotta do is type it into my phone, and I've got like the first 16 steps that'll pop up and say, well, first do this, first do that, but this kind of, but if you don't make the choice to look up the information, you don't make the move. And so I think we're moving into that state of awareness. Hey, if I don't make that choice consistently of treating, of extraordinary customer service, then I'm not going to get extraordinary tips. I'm not going to get extraordinary ratings, as an individual or as a company, because all of life is powered by choice, and it happens at the speed of choice. The instant that choice is made, it's like zap, the energy goes, if you're feeling frustrated, the energy is going to go to being, I'm unstuck, or am I going to keep saying the phrase, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. But the energy, imagine, like some electric blue energy running down that red line toward the stuck part. We're the one who decides where that energy goes, right back here at that choice point where the red and the blue arrows meet. We're the only one who can control that. And it takes effort. Unfortunately, if if I could do something with a magic wand, believe me, I would do it with a magic wand. I wouldn't be here. I'd be tapping myself somewhere else, doing something else probably. But there's no magic wand. It's the direction of the energy and where are you going to make it flow into frustration, anxiety, depression. Not that you wouldn't need help. I'm not making light of that. But there's still that other choice to say, I I know I can get a foothold here. I know I got a handhold. I know for the next 30 seconds, I can think of something or do something that's going to put my mind in this new choice direction. And so I think you hit on something there quite a bit, which is I think the next level of consciousness is awareness of choice.
Yeah, no, it's really powerful, and I completely agree with you. And I really like the way you kind of broken it down in those diagrams as well.
Well, thank you.
And no, you're welcome. And it kind of makes me think about the kind of current situation that we're in, because in the UK here right now,
Yeah.
we're in our third lockdown, and we're in a lockdown now, probably till next mid month, February. It's probably depending on what happens. And like right now, when people are locked down, like the almost, we have those choices, don't we? And I know everyone's in a completely different situation, but it's like the choice is like what do you do? Do you get frustrated and watch the news and complain about about the things that you can't control, or are you, like you said, are you going to look at what can you do in this time? And
Right.
it's that kind of those two paths, isn't it? Again,
Yeah.
that can be brought into this situation. I think that's a great way of breaking it down as well.
Yeah, because you can't escape, and I've thought of that too, exactly what you're saying, and I stay away from news for those reasons because it's just, would I rather spend my time, you know, having this conversation with you, which thank you, I'm enjoying it very much. I really appreciate
No, you're
the
welcome.
and or do I spend it, like you said, put my mind on things that I can't fix. It takes it takes practice. There is no magic wand. I'd love for there to be a magic wand to do it. Um, and so, but I think that is what is helping to launch what I call the choice revolution. The choice revolution that we're in now is we we just kind of took choice for granted. It's 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 invisible. It's not something you can see, which is why I made it something that you could see. And can I show one other visual? Yeah, the other visual is that the
As many
idea.
as you like.
Well, the other visual. Hopefully this isn't too big. Um, this one, but this is uh, this is an instrument. This is a thing that's called. I'll back it up. It's it's called an attitude indicator.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so you see the brown part. Whenever you're flying, you can fly in the
Mm.
clouds all the way from London, all the way around the world if you had enough gas. And you take off in the fog in London at Heathrow, come back and land at Heathrow, basically only having this instrument in your airplane. I mean, there's others, don't get me wrong. But this instrument, the brown represents the dirt and the blue
Mm.
represents the sky. And as long as that instrument is pointing right between the brown and the blue, that means the plane's flying level. Like right now, this one's indicating, because it's pointing in the blue, it's indicating that it's climbing slightly. The airplane is slightly climbing, but you can take off in the fog, never see the ground whatsoever, and navigate exactly where you need to go and back, back in London. But you have this instrument, and it's called, of all things, an attitude indicator. So the idea was, why would they put these kind of instruments in airplanes? Because the mind processes visuals 60,000 times faster than words. That's why, you know, that's why you have, all these different images come up these days because 60,000 times faster people get it. So when I look at this and I'm flying, I go, oh, okay, everything's cool, or I need to make a correction, one way or the other. I could be somewhere out over the Indian Ocean. Doesn't matter. You know, I, what that looks like. And
Mm.
that's kind of what went into the idea behind the just two choices diagram. So the just two choices diagram, in a similar way,
Yeah, I can see that. That's fine.
yep, in a similar way, that's the only visual you need to know. It tells you the direction of your choice. Is it an upward direction, just like toward the blue, toward the sky, right? Or is it a downward direction? Just like when the instrument points toward going toward the ground to land, you'd be expecting to see, the instrument pointing into the brown that I just showed you. But I wanted, if we learn and remember things 60,000 times faster for a visual, then then let's do something that bypasses the word choice, and whatever a choice means and whatever the concept of choice is, why don't we just make it a picture?
Mm.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. And so, we're talking earlier about, anxiety and some of these other things. When I see problems, I see this. I don't see I got a problem. I see the direction of what's going to give me a solution, and what one's going to in the red direction, which is going to take me toward the problem. Blue sky, we're heading towards the ground. But that's why
Mm.
this diagram exists, because this diagram actually came from, just came from flying, because you're going like, well, if it works for the SST, if it worked for the
Mm.
Concorde, if it worked for
Yeah.
if it worked for the Concorde, if it works for 747s, it works for if there's a reason it's in every airplane,
Yeah.
it works,
Mm.
and it's instant. You
Mm.
instantly get it. Then why can't we do the same with making choices? To give people that edge, that first step, that when when you're up against the wall and you go, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I got just two choices.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
so that's kind of where the visual came, and my
Mm.
art background. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely, really interesting, the points you make, and I agree with you, and I think it's those choices, isn't it? When you're in when somebody's experienced maybe, that anxiety or that those uncomfortable, sensations, and that heat of the moment, isn't it? That heat of the moment, and it's like, those, what choices are you going to make? Are you going to go this way or that way? And I think that, that can be applied to, if people want to eat better, you either, if your health's a certain way, you either eat better, or you continue on that path, don't you? Or
yeah,
you keep drinking, or you don't keep drinking, that kind of thing. I think it makes me think, to, like I said, to what happened when, I had my accident and stuff in the past. I kind of had those two choices. My choice was I can't be doing, whatever I was doing before, because otherwise I knew if I was doing what I was doing before, chasing my ego, pleasing other people, and not thinking, then that was ultimately going to put me down one other road.
yes,
But I'm not saying bad things should happen for you to wake up, but that's ultimately, with that diagram and what you're saying, just kind of ties in my mind from where I was at that point. There's like two roads. I saw two roads. It was either, well,
exactly.
can't do that because X Y Z is going to happen. And
Yes,
I think, like you said, like images as well, and it kind of baffles me why a lot of people don't sometimes probably use images. They just kind of keep talking and talking and talking. And like you said, with an image and talking about it, it's more effective, isn't it?
yeah, and it's easy to point on the diagram. It's easy to point to the direction that's down, and when they talk about the direction, they'll say, well, just humbly, just which direction's that taking you? You know,
Mm.
it's not might not be taking you into a deep dive, going downhill, but it's still taking you on an incline, a small incline, downhill. In fact, one that I'll share 3 ideas here that might help people, that help the listeners. I have 3 things that I fall back on all the time. The very first one is if I'm having a, it, if I'm having it, mostly comes up in difficult situations, but think about it when things are going well. I say three words. I go, I choose to. I choose to wear this blue shirt today. You chose to wear black. I choose to wear, or to have coffee or not have coffee, or just pick whatever it is. Anything that you're reaching out to touch, say, I choose to do that. I choose to pick up this pen. I choose to pick up this coffee cup. After about 3 minutes, you're going to be so tired of saying, I choose to, but your awareness level is going to raise to the fact you're going like, wow, everything's a choice. Everything around me is a choice. So the next phrase I use is, if I'm getting in things that are very challenging, I'll say, I add a couple more words. I say, I choose to tell my new story. I choose to tell my new story. Because I know the old story, as we've seen on the diagram, the old story is the stuck story. And part of me is gonna say some not very kind words to myself about choosing, how foolish it is to choose to tell a new story. But the bottom line is, knowing what the diagram looks like, the bottom line is it's irrefutable. The more I tell, I know it's irrefutable. The more I tell the old story, the longer it's going to suck. The situation is going to be worse. And then sometimes I just get very short with myself, and I just go, dude, just 2 choices. I kind of like,
Yeah.
knock it off, dude. It's just like, just 2 choices. You're on overwhelm right now. Choose to tell a new story. I don't want to tell a new story. All right, then just 2 choices. Take it, take it on the chin. But those are the 3 phrases. But the first one, if you just use the phrase, I choose to, I think we all wake up to how much choice is around us. And there's a free download if people want to, if people are interested in it. If I could say it now, they could just it's go to just 2 choices with the number 2.com / and it's just because it covers all the bases. Radio / radio, and you'll get 2 downloads that'll give you the diagram. They'll show you, and there's instructions with it, and then you can actually cut them out and like hang them up on on your cabinet, or hang them up on your refrigerator, or hang them up in the mirror in the house. You can actually cut them out, but there's instructions with them. So just2choices.com / radio, and you can get the first chapter of the book for free. And that's all you need. Once you read the first chapter of the book, you go, oh, I get this. In fact, just have to read the cover, really.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And when I post this, I will put those diagrams that with the cover of this as well.
Well, thank you.
And no, you're welcome. And I'm just kind of like thinking as well, like, do you have any kind of favorite books that you like to read at all, as well as yours?
Well, my favorite books are more spiritual.
Yeah.
I enjoy reading. I enjoy reading and looking at people like Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. I think I like their approaches to things. And a guy by the name of Grant Cardone has. You might be familiar with Grant, and so he has.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's real. I like how direct he is.
He's very to the point.
Yeah. It's like, and so, those I'd say right off the top, those are the ones that pop to mind for me. And then I like reading spiritual stuff. So
yeah.
So that's
no.
And in between that, I guess it's just wake up and let's get on with another day and make it happen.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think it's important to read, isn't it? It's important to read and to learn new things, as you said, and to make that that choice. No, that's fine. And kind of it's how you grow, isn't it, as a person by doing that. And I was just thinking, I ask up to round up one more question. Do you have any like kind of role models, or like anyone you kind of like look up to, or friends professionally, or
I've had a lot of really good. I've been really blessed. Um, um, in the military, I've had in the Air Force, I've had um, a couple, so I'd say several commanders that, without a question, you could be there side by side, and there's no hesitation, whatsoever. Um, outside of that, um, uh, the one of the co-founders of Southwest Airlines, Herb Kelleher, I got to know him pretty well, and he's just he's like Sir Richard Branson. No, he's just a legendary, somebody who sees it and says, "That's crazy. Let's do it." And he leads with his heart, and there's not a thing that he would ask you to do that he wouldn't do himself, and has a brilliant sense of humor. That would be another one. Um, of
yeah,
course, even with the challenges at home, you still got to pick your parents too. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you still got to
yeah. No,
give them credit for for the stuff you liked and the stuff you didn't like. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, I see. I think it's important, isn't it, to have role models and mentors and things like that, and people you can to kind of draw from and aspire to as well.
I'm half Italian, and I'm half Slovak. And so on the Slovak side of the family, we're from coal mining towns. On the
Yeah,
Slovak
yeah,
side of the family, um, they were always like, dream big, man. It's a big world. If you don't like it, you can always come back here. On
mm,
the Italian side, you got the practical side. What do you want to leave home for? But I
yeah,
mean, but there's a practical skill to that. You know,
yeah,
and so it's like I got a combination of that dream big. You can always come home. We're always going to love you. And that other side, that's let's be a little more practical about it.
yeah.
So
It's a good.
I guess it
It's a
was
good
good.
balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a good balance.
Ah, it's
And
awesome.
yeah, how about you?
Me, what role models wise?
Yeah, yes, please.
Um, I would say my mom. My mom's done quite well, and she's gone through trials and tribulations, and she's a um psychotherapist, and she did a master's whilst moving house, having me and my two younger brothers. And
Wow.
yeah, she's incredible, my mom. And I really like Kevin Hart, the stand-up comedian.
Yep, yep,
And he's quite inspirational. And I've learned a lot through Gary V, Gary Vaynerchuk,
yep, yep.
um, Grant Cardone, and a lot of the people that I've met on my podcast. A lot of like yourself and other people. And are my mentors and role models. People I continue to meet. Which
Yeah.
I'm really blessed for.
That's a really good point. Sometimes people think of podcasts or radio shows as just an interview, but I mean it's a role model opportunity to be
Mm.
focused on on um, clear solutions.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I agree. It's powerful, and I think listening to people's stories is powerful, and there's always something someone can take from, like and learn from somebody.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's been a pleasure talking to you, Rico. And where can people find you on your website or social media, that kind of thing?
Yeah, just2choices.com. Just remember that. Keep it easy that way, and that'll be a good start. And then if you put the /radio, you'll get the free downloads
Yeah,
um, of the book and the first chapter of the book, and those two other things you can hang up in your house. They have,
yeah.
they have the diagram that can remind you to stay
I'll
open. positive choices. So,
I'll print it out and I'll have it on my wall in my fridge, so I keep it in mind.
well, thank you. If there's
No, no,
anything
you're
else
welcome.
I can do for you, just
Yeah.
please contact me. And thank you.
No, no, you're most welcome. You're most welcome, of course.